Welcome back. This is episode number 337 of the Healthy Diabetic Podcast. I'm Coach Ken. If you don't know much about my story, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 25 in 2007. And I'm the founder of Simplifying Life with Diabetes, a diabetes health coaching company that bridges the gap between your medical team and the daily complexities that you face every single day living with this condition. I truly believe that every single one of us living or caring for someone with type 1 diabetes only has one job, and that's to figure out what's going to work for you. If you're looking for new perspectives and new ideas on how to live with diabetes, you've come to the right place. As always, before we get started, please remember that nothing that you hear in this podcast should be considered medical advice or otherwise. Please always consult your medical team before making any changes to your diabetes management. Okay. I'm solo today. Graham's not with us. I want to just remind you guys, if you don't know, okay, Graham is another really good friend of mine who's type 1, and we run a live podcast. Yes, live, you can stream it. Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The day before and even the day after, or the day of each of those episodes that come out, or were the episodes that we're doing live, there should be a link to get on the live in my stories on Instagram. So check that out. You can also hopefully stream it on Instagram and on Facebook and on LinkedIn. We're not sure if those links actually work, but we're trying to navigate that as well. So make sure you tune in Tuesdays and Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if there's a better day for you or better time of the day than 2 p.m., let me know that too. We're still trying to figure out what's going to work for people. We want it to be a very interactive show where people can come on the live, chat with us, come on and tell us their story live for 10, 15 minutes, whatever. So we're trying to build that part of this podcast as well. Okay. I got a freaking incredible episode. This individual, wow, she has been around the block when we talk about diabetes right now. It is insane. She's been on Your Best T1D a year with Neil Greathouse. She's been on Juicebox Podcast. She's been on the Diabetes Nerd. She's been on Reclaim Your Rise with Lauren Bongiorno. My gosh. This is, if you live under a rock right now in diabetes, you probably still have heard about Beth Hand. Holy geez. So Beth is Patient-9 in a trial that I'm going to have her talk about and give us all the details about, a really cool trial that is looking to cure type 1. And she would say, I think that she would say, and I think a lot of other people would say, that she has cured type 1. She is cured of type 1 diabetes. So we're going to talk about all of the amazing things in this trial. We're going to talk about how this trial is different than other trials that are going on. We're going to talk about what stage of the trial that this is kind of in, how she kind of found it and got into it. We're talking about her diagnosis story as well. So many incredible parts to this, things that unravel, I would say, in this episode. So I'm so excited for you guys to listen to this. I was really worried when I saw her going on all these other podcasts I wasn't going to get her on, but I got her, everybody. I got her. We got her. This is an incredible episode. Let's just get into it. So without further ado, let's get with Beth Hand.
My name is Beth Hand, and I am Patient-9 in the Eledon clinical trial to create a functional cure for type 1 diabetes. I was diagnosed with type 1 back at the beginning of 2013, and since then have spent the subsequent years trying to learn more about diabetes, educate others about diabetes, and am now enrolled in a clinical trial, which has completely changed my life. And I'm really excited to be with you today, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. We were talking before we pressed record about how many of these you've done now over the past 2-3 months. It is crazy. I first heard you on Neil's podcast. I heard you on the Juicebox podcast. I mean, I think I've listened to you now 4 different podcasts. So it's pretty awesome.
I'm surprised you wanted to have me on. You're probably tired of the sound of my voice by now, Ken.
God, no, because you know why? Because I listened to all 4 of them, and I'm hoping that I'm going to ask you some different questions than they did.
That's great.
But this is insane. I mean, I think I heard on one of your clips on social media that like you didn't start posting to like get any like crazy response or something like that. You just posted to share with like your family and stuff how the trial's going, and then now you're going viral. It's freaking insane.
Yeah. The backstory on that was I did a post about a month ago, maybe a little more now, like on Facebook, which nobody follows me on Facebook except people I know in real life, like people I work with, people from my church, people from my parents' church. So I had just posted an update from the trial in Chicago, just saying I had a mixed meal tolerance test. It was great, curing type 1 diabetes, yay. Went to sleep and woke up and like millions of people had seen it, liked it, commented on it, sent me messages. And so from there, what I realized was there's so much going on that people just don't know because it doesn't get talked about. And so I kind of made it my mission to not necessarily educate people, but just give people a view into there's really, really exciting stuff happening. It really is real. It's happening to real people. And as one of those people living this, here's kind of what that looks like. I don't have a medical background. If you've listened to my other podcasts, you know that I don't have a medical background. So I'm giving people the overview of sort of what this process is, what some of these things look like from just a regular, average type 1 diabetic person's perspective.
Yeah. I watched that clip and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is insane. And then it's funny, Katie, because that was my first, that just showed up on my feed randomly. And that was my first, connection to you. And then I saw you were on Neil's podcast. Oh, let me check this out. And I listened to that one. And then I saw you on all these other podcasts. I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. And then there was a part of me that I was like, man, am I too late to this? Am I going to get her on? Am I too late? She's on everyone's podcast. Am I too late?
No, I love it. I love podcasting. I told you before we hit record, I love to talk to people. I love to, tell people just about this experience. I love to talk about diabetes, and that was true back before I was even in a clinical trial. There is something about being a type 1 diabetic that when you meet another person with type 1, you have like an instant connection, possibly trauma bonding, but definitely an instant connection. You both have a diagnosis day story. You both have tips and tricks. You both have, you automatically know when you meet another type 1 that you have more in common than differentiates you from the get-go. And so I love to meet other people in our community, and this has been a great opportunity to get to do that.
Yeah. Wow, it's crazy. Okay, I want to kind of start with maybe a different place than you started with some of the other podcasts. I want to go into the trial. This is really important for everyone to understand the details of it if you haven't heard the other episodes. But I also want everyone to hear another side of Katie, and that's like the type 1 Katie that's not in the trial. Like her diagnosis and how all that went. How's life been being Katie Beth Hand, not in the trial, but type 1 diabetic Katie Beth Hand? I want to hear that story too.
Okay. Well, so that's the less fun part of the story, right? The cure side is a lot more fun. So I was diagnosed in 2013. I'm the only person in my family with type 1 or with any sort of autoimmune disease. So it came completely out of the blue. I was 26 years old. I was a free spirit. I was working for a travel company. I was traveling the world and had just gotten back from a 10-day trip, taking a bunch of tourists over to Israel, had gotten back, thought I had jet lag or the flu. And I was about to take a group of tourists over to Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And so in the 4-day period while I was home, I decided to go to the doctor because my onset was fast, but it was slow enough that it's not like I woke up one day and couldn't function. My symptoms came on over the course of several months, I think, looking back at it. And so the thing that finally pushed me to go see the doctor is I was like, man, my jet lag's terrible. I might have the flu. Before I go back out, on an international trip, I'll go just make sure. So I walk into the doctor thinking I've got the flu or I'll leave with an antibiotic, something simple, and end up getting diagnosed with a chronic illness, which for a free spirit 26-year-old it felt like a death sentence. And I was completely blindsided. Originally, we have a history of type 2 diabetes in my family. So because I was 26, even though I was, young and in shape, because I was 26 and because we have a family history of type 2, they actually thought originally from that original appointment, she's type 2. It must be type 2. So they diagnosed me with type 2. And that was shocking, but like, there's that part of me in my mind that was like, that's okay. I'm going to overcome this. Like, I'll be that person. So I leave the doctor's office and a few hours later get an absolutely code red panicked phone call from the nurse.
What?
And I don't know what test result came back, if it was like C-Peptide or my A1C or what it was. They got some result back and she calls me nervously and is like, hey, glad you're still alive. We don't think you're type 2. We think you're type 1. Please drop everything that you're doing. Go straight to the emergency room. We called ahead. They are waiting for you there because I was in DKA.
Whoa.
And so
it unfolds now. It unfolds.
There it is.
Oh my gosh.
And so dropped everything, went to the ER, checked in, and overnight went from healthy, athletic, all of these different things to sick, no cure. This is life from here on out. And in the hospital, when I tell you that the subsequent weeks following diagnosis were truly a period of grief, and only someone who has been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes as an adult or a parent of a child who has been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, it's a grief only those people can comprehend. This is it. There's no hope. There's no going back. And, those first injections you give yourself, those first finger pricks, it feels like climbing Everest. I mean, and being told this is it and this is the rest of your life, there was really, really a period of grief for weeks while I put all of these pieces together and tried to figure out, who I was. And now I need a job that's more reliable and has good insurance. And it changed every aspect of my life. I wasn't a young, free-spirited, travel the world 26-year-old anymore. I had to grow up.
Man, where do I start?
So that was the less fun part of the story.
But for me, girl, this is also the fun part of the story because it tells a story that not a lot of people are able to tell. Not a lot of people are able to tell the entire diabetes community their personal story. And when we meet people in the wild that are also diabetic and we tell our story, it's a smaller portion of that. So I personally, for me, I thank you and appreciate you for telling that story because it allows other people that maybe are going through maybe that same thing to understand that they're not alone. Like, I really wish when I was first diagnosed that I had an outlet of podcasts that I could listen to, that I could listen to stories like this, because I was so alone, my blood sugar, I could have been DK, I don't know. My blood sugar was 450. They gave me an insulin, a 70/30 insulin pen, a glucose monitor, said, we'll see you back in 2 weeks. That was literally my diagnosis. Not go to the hospital.
How old were you?
To get safe, 25.
Yeah. Okay. So you were an adult too. It's not more or less traumatic, but it's a different kind of trauma as an adult versus, I think, as a kid. As a child, it's very physically traumatic, but you don't fully comprehend the
At
way.
least not right away. Yes, %. Yeah.
As an adult, you understand immediately that life is different and you can't go back.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. Okay, so what was next for you? What was like the next thing that happened? Take us like maybe 3, 4, 5 months, maybe half a year after diagnosis, maybe even a year. Like, what was going on in life? Did you have to give up the traveling job and figure something else out? Like, I'm curious about this now.
Yeah, I missed my trip to Germany, Austria, and Switzerland because I was in the hospital in DKA. That was tough. So in the following weeks, one interesting thing you touched on that I want to hit on is, I hope this doesn't happen as often with children. I don't know. When I talk to other people with T1D that get diagnosed as adults, they have a similar experience to yours and to mine in that there is not a good level of education.
Yep.
I got diagnosed. I was in the hospital. They managed my diabetes while I was there for a couple of days, pulling me out of DKA. And then when it was time to check out, a nurse came in like an hour before I checked out and showed me how to draw insulin into an insulin pen out of a vial, showed me how to do an injection, and then showed me how to check my blood sugar. and then they just like set me free. And as a person who really has a full grasp now of type 1, the fact that I didn't go home and accidentally overdose on one of the most powerful drugs in the entire world is by God's grace alone.
Yeah.
And so, now I think there's a lot better education. I hope there is. But at the time, it was interesting. I checked out. They set me loose. And then I literally left the hospital and went to the pharmacy and picked up my very first prescription of insulin, 2 different types of insulin, bought a glucose meter, and then they also had sent in a prescription for glucagon. No clue what it's for, no clue how to use it, $200 out of pocket. Like when I tell you I'm spiraling, I'm lost.
Yeah.
And so that was the days immediately following. I always describe it as those first days and weeks following diagnosis. I felt like I was being like sprayed in the face with the fire hose of all of this new information because there was such a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
So got all that done. And then like a week later, the hospital called me and set an appointment for like the next week with a diabetes educator. And that's really the first time anybody sat me down when I met with her, and she was wonderful. That's the first time anybody really sat me down and explained to me what was going on and how diabetes worked. 2 weeks after my diagnosis, 2 weeks after I'd been managing my own diabetes. Like that part of the story doesn't get talked about enough because that is, I can't believe you and I are here having this podcast, honestly, Ken.
Yeah. I spent the first almost 3.5 years in depression denial and completely isolating myself from emotionally from everyone. I met my now wife probably 2 years into my diagnosis. She probably didn't realize or know that I was diagnosed for, I don't know, 3-4 months because I hid it so well. And then she didn't realize probably I don't even know how long it was, but it was a very long time that I was like having lots of challenges mentally because I was just, it was just the denial of it was so powerful. It was insane. And it's funny that you bring up the fact that you hope that it's different, it's getting better for adults. I would almost argue that it's not. From the conversations that I'm having, I hope it is too on a grand scale. I can't tell you on even my show how many people I've talked to that are in a similar fashion from us. I've talked to multiple people that were misdiagnosed because of their skin color, because of the way they look, because of their weight, misdiagnosed for almost a year and a half. They're on medication. They don't have insulin. They're like having a really challenging, hard time. So it is something that we don't get to talk about enough. And I think it's very important for all of us to keep pushing that conversation piece of like this. Why is it so different? Why is it so good in adolescent versus adult?
Yeah, with kids, I guess because it's probably much more common, although it's becoming more and more common in adults. It's much more common, I think, in children. And so therefore, there tends to be better education, and it's kind nurses and doctors educating traumatized parents. And so I think that's why there, to some degree, is a better level of education because it is someone teaching someone else how to manage this disease. When you're an adult, they're like, here's the supplies, best of luck to you. And you're kind of left on your own to figure that out. And you know now how dangerous that is, but it's so common. The fact that a C-Peptide test is not required across the board when giving a simple blood test, when you're getting blood draws anyway at your annual checkup, or when they diagnose you with diabetes, the fact that we're not checking C-Peptide before we diagnose someone with gestational diabetes. I can't tell you how many women have reached out to me and said, I got diagnosed with gestational diabetes, and then it was supposed to get better when I had my baby. I kept getting sicker. I almost died. Turns out it was type 1. We don't test people for diabetes in adulthood. We just don't. And so we don't run A1Cs often enough. We don't run it across the board for enough men and women. We don't run it across the board for all of these different like racial and ethnic groups. And so because we're not running this very basic test to catch this, there are people really out there struggling and being misdiagnosed. There's so many people I've talked to that got diagnosed as a type 2 that got put on some of these medications like metformin, great for type 2, can make a type 1 really sick and really burn out what few islet cells they have even faster.
Yeah.
And that is such a common story that we hear. So the fact that there's not more common testing, and the fact that we're not running a basic C-Peptide test before telling someone that they have type 2 diabetes or gestational and sending them out the door. The reason there are so many women that get misdiagnosed with gestational diabetes is because when you're pregnant, that's one of the times in your life that they randomly do a blood sugar test.
Yeah, I agree. We can talk all day long about all the symptoms. Like when you go into the hospital, I have these symptoms. Like when you are testing blood sugar, or when you're testing and doing blood draws, like you're saying, like the A1C and the glucose test should be the one of the tests that they do when you do annual blood sugar tests.
Right.
The other thing that's crazy, I don't know if you've seen, I might have the percent wrong. Post-COVID, close to 60% of all the diagnoses right now are adults. 60% of all the type 1 that percent might be off, so don't hate on me, everybody, but I'm pretty sure that's pretty close.
It's interesting that you say that. So I've had a lot of people comment on my posts and say, that they got their diagnosis post-COVID, or that they've had a transplant or an islet cell transplant, pancreas transplant, and then got COVID, and then it killed off their islet cells and they went back to having type 1.
Wow.
I've had more than one person.
I didn't even think of that. Honestly, didn't even. Yeah. You have a transplant. Now you don't have type 1 because you have free-flowing insulin. And now all of a sudden, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. And so that's one of the reasons that the trial I'm in is cool. So I think one of the reasons that's happening is because when you have a transplant right now, you have to go on traditional immunosuppressants. So you're less able to fight off things like COVID. Yep. So it has a better chance at coming in, ironically, and attacking your islet cells or your pancreas or whatever it is. Now, that's not true for the general public that didn't have a transplant. COVID's causing more type 1 across the board. But I think that's one of the pieces that's so important as we move towards, more targeted immunosuppression, and eventually as we make steps towards ways to not require any immunosuppression. We're not just curing the disease, we're preventing it from coming back again. And that's a huge deal.
Yeah. So let's take the pivot. You took us through the pivot. Let's go for it.
Right.
I think one of the interesting things when I first heard about this, I was the skeptical person, obviously, because I've read about the Vertex one. I've read about some of the other ones that have been happening, and all of them so far has been like, you have to go on immunosuppressants. So like you said, it completely destroys your ability to fight off a lot of infections and a lot of disease, or, a lot of things that are happening. And my skepticism always was, I'm trading one thing for the other. Right. And so that's always been my skepticism. But then I heard you talk about it, and I want to go down that route here in a second. I want you to explain the trial at first. I think it's very interesting to hear your perspective of it's not a true immunosuppressant drug that this trial's using. So we'll go down that route, but why don't you just give us a kind of a semi-high level of what the trial is, and then give us, for those who haven't heard any of the other podcasts, give us a little bit of information of how you got into it.
Yeah, sure. So I had a pretty rough, about 2 years ago, pretty rough day in the world of type 1 diabetes. All days are rough, but it was one of those like highs, lows, couldn't get it under control. I was so frustrated. Like it was the emotional drain of having type 1. And so I went down the rabbit hole of clinical trials. And I am, one of the reasons I think people connect to me when I talk about this is because I was the ultimate skeptic. Like I was skeptical to the point of jaded. Everybody's like, oh, just 5 years. And I'm like, it will never happen. Like it'll never happen. And so I went down, I'd been looking through the research, and there were so many things happening, like even a couple of years ago, that were exciting. You hear about, like you see the news headline that says, type 1 cured in China. And
Yeah,
you're
I
like,
saw
oh
that
my
one.
gosh. And then you go and look and it's like a mouse. Like if you've got to have diabetes these days, like pray that you're a mouse because they are getting cured all over the place.
Yeah.
And or you hear about like a trial where like it was successful and one patient, and then you never hear anything about it again. And so I think the only thing worse for type 1s, the only thing worse than having no hope of a cure is having more false hope of a cure. Like that's the thing that brings me to it would bring me to the absolute breaking point. And so I'd had a tough diabetes day. And I went down the rabbit hole of research and clinical trials and ended up finding two. One was the Vertex study, and the other one was Eledon, which was actually a lot less talked about at the time. And so I did like all of this research on both and ended up reaching out to the research team, which runs through University of Chicago, and applying for the trial. So the short version of how that went, I applied, really didn't think anything more about it, and then ended up getting a call, did 2 different phone interviews, had to fill out all of this information. You know, the trial stuff is like super specific.
Yeah.
One of the questions I get all the time is like, what made them pick you for the trial? And I'm like, well, not my personality. Like it's like medical criteria.
Yeah.
I'm not totally nuts and I fit all the medical criteria. And so answered all of these questions, ended up flying up to Chicago in May of 2025. And at that point, when I made that trip, like I was still hesitant, but I was like, I would describe myself very, very cautiously optimistic. I wasn't sold, but I was hopeful. And so I went up, I met the team. I did a week, like 5 straight days of medical testing to make sure I was in good enough shape for the trial and to build a baseline to participate in the trial. When I met the team, that was the moment that I was like, I'm in. Because you hear about like researchers and doctors and big pharma and it's money.
Yeah.
And I've always believed that. But then I went up to Chicago and I met this group of people who are now family for me. And they genuinely are committed to finding a cure. It's not about the money. It's not about grants. It's not about fame. These people have type 1. They have a kid with type 1. They've received an islet cell transplant themselves. Like they are people on a mission to cure type 1. So once I met the team when I was there, I was like, then I'm like, well, pick me. So they did. I got the call. The way the trial kind of works after I got chosen for that, you receive an islet cell transplant. So your alpha and beta cells, your alpha cells make glucagon. Your beta cells, that's what your body's killed off, your autoimmune disease. That's what makes your insulin. So the interesting piece of this that even I didn't really understand is that when you get an islet cell transplant, now you have functioning beta cells that make insulin, but they also communicate with your alpha cells that make your glucagon. And so not only do I not have these crazy highs, I don't go low anymore. In retrospect, if I had to tell you the biggest thing that's changed my life, it's not ever going low. And we can talk more about what that's like.
Yes.
But I got my islet cell transplant. That's actually a super easy process. I mean, it's like you hear the word transplant and you're like, oh my gosh, transplant. I mean, I got a like tiny incision and there was like a Bandaid after. I stayed there for a week and then, you know, the way the trial works, you get your islet cell transplant and then you take Myfortic, and then for a while, I'm also on a couple of post-surgery for 3 months post-surgery medications. So I'm on an antifungal, an antiviral, and an antibiotic post-surgery. And then you take, instead of the traditional immunosuppressant, tacrolimus, which can have a lot of really nasty side effects. That's like a full immunosuppressant, can cause kidney damage, neurotoxicity. It can damage your islet cells eventually. So instead of doing that, the trial is to try this new drug, Tegaprubart. So let's talk about the name Tegaprubart. We're going to call it Tego from here on out.
Tego, I got it.
So Tego is an anti-CD40 ligand inhibitor. Ironically, the name Tegaprubart actually is shorter than what it actually is, but it is a very, very, very targeted immunosuppressant that keeps your body from attacking your beta cells again without causing any other side effects. So I've got 4 kids at home. They are little petri dishes and bring home every flu, cold, virus. One of the questions I get all the time is, what are your restrictions? What are you not allowed to do? Can you go in public? Can you? And like my answer to that is like, yes, my life hasn't changed at all. I fly on a plane without a mask, and I go to church and sit in a big crowd, and I go to my kids' sporting events, and I go outside all day. None of those typical things you have to be really cautious of are things that I have to worry about with this. So that's incredible. And that's how the trial works. You get your islet cell transplant, you protect it. Tegaprubart is an infusion. So it's an IV that I get. It takes about an hour, and it's every 21 days.
Okay.
That will change eventually. There's data that suggests you don't need it nearly that often. But I try to remind people I am in a trial. So my piece is a lot more involved than what the average public person's would look like. Because every time that I go every 21 days, there's all this additional blood work, and they're gathering all this data for the trial. So I fly up to Chicago every 21 days. I get my little IV infusion. I sit there and work or read books or watch my iPad, and then I fly back home. It doesn't make me sick. It doesn't give me a headache. It doesn't make me dizzy. I live my life. So what I've essentially traded with this trial is the constant highs and lows of diabetes and the constant mental load of planning for that and dealing with that. Or a couple of pills a day and an every 21-day IV infusion. 100 out of 100 would do it again.
Yeah. Wow, girl. This is, I don't know tons about the Vertex trial and what's going on with Vertex, but this sounds like a completely different thing than what that trial is doing. The really interesting thing, I think one of the most interesting things of this whole process for you, and as I'm hearing it, is that it seems like we're coming up with, we're way closer at least to having some type of cure, whatever this cure might be for all of us, with not having to go on immunosuppressants that cause a lot of problems. That is like, for me, that's like the number one thing that I've been trying to pay attention to with your story. It's like, okay, how is this really working? Like, is it working now? It's like, how's it going to work in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, a year, like whatever it is. So that for me, I'm stoked about it. I'm excited. Yeah. It's like the first time I heard Neil say to you on his show, it's like you don't even have type 1 diabetes anymore. It's like, how does that make you feel? And like all these things. And we've been told that there's been a cure. There's a cure coming. Like every single year they say that.
Yes, right.
And it's like, now it's like the very first time in all of the years, the 18 years that I've had this condition, that like, there seems to be, you can see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. And I always tell people when I talk about, there's so many cool trials happening right now. There's the Eledon trial that I'm in. You mentioned Vertex. That also runs under my same doctor through University of Chicago. So if you don't know anything about Vertex, the goal of Vertex is to create a lab-grown islet cell, and eventually a lab-grown islet cell that can hide from the immune system and doesn't require any immunosuppression. So that idea is very cool. They're also doing stuff with like pig islet cells and seeing if they can transplant those into humans and avoid immunosuppressants and have the pig islet cells regulate blood sugar. There's a lady that I talked to that's in a trial where they're putting islet cells into one of her eyeballs. Your eyeballs actually work on a completely different immune system from the rest of your body. And so they're putting islet cells into her eyeball, and she'll take immunosuppressant eye drops just in that one eye. And they're trying that to see if that can regulate blood sugar. And so there are also some really cool things happening with like, there's a trial looking at like cord blood when a baby's born, and there's a protein that they can test for that can identify pre-accurately whether or not they'll ever develop type 1. So what I'm telling people with all of this research happening right now is I do not look at any of these trials like they are competitors. I love the trial I'm in because that's my lived experience and I think it's the future. But if someone invents a pill to cure diabetes tomorrow, that's great and I'll take it. I think what you will see is that there are this is a big puzzle, and where we are now for the first time in human history is that the science is actually bringing together all of the pieces of the puzzle so that we can address type 1 diabetes as a whole. So there's this side of the series like Vertex and Eledon that are addressing type 1 diabetes for people like us who already have it. Then there's a whole different side, like with Tzield and some of these other medications and testing and prevention that are attacking it from the, one day when we've cured everyone that has type 1, then the focus will be on keeping people from ever getting it in the first place. And so for the first time in human history, all of these little pieces are really beginning to come together and match up. And I don't know what that will eventually look like. And I don't know what the timeline is on that. And I don't know how much that will cost. But I keep telling people, I am the ultimate skeptic. And I look at these kids with diabetes and I do not believe at all that they will have diabetes their whole lives. I do not. I think it will happen for our generation, Ken, and those older than us as well. I believe it'll easily happen within our lifetime. I mean, obviously it's going pretty well for me, but generally across the board, I think it will happen for our generation and the older ones. But I am certain for these young kids getting diagnosed with T1, I look at those kids and in my head, I'm like, I'll never say the phrase just 5 years, but in my head, I'm like, just give it time. Give it time. Yeah. You won't deal with this your whole life. And I believe it's true.
It's girl, it's so crazy. I just when I started hearing your story, like I said, it's like, okay, now, this looks like this is for real. This looks like, and I like what you're saying about their Eledon, Vertex, all of these different trials are now pulling resources to figure out, okay, well, this worked, this didn't work. This worked, this didn't work. Let's take these things, put them together. Now what's the next thing? So I think that's a really interesting piece to think about. It really could be within our lifetime. Because, 2 years ago, I would have said, no freaking way.
Right. Same. Me too. Even the day I was sitting there Googling clinical trials and signing up for one, I knew it would never actually work out. I certainly didn't think it would work out for me. Yeah. And I think that that's one reason that people really connect to, people are really excited about Eladon. One thing that's really different is that, my doctor, Dr. Rakowski, has been talking about, I'm patient 9 out of originally 10. Now there's 12 of us from the first cohort. And he's been talking about this, the success of this for 18 months. He's like, hey, I've pulled a T1 completely off insulin with no side effects. And there was some media coverage. I think everybody's still so skeptical. The reason it's crazy right now is because now it's successful patient after patient after patient after patient. And because of social media, it's no longer a random article that you read and you're like, I wonder if it's a mouse, or we'll never hear about this trial again. You see my doctor post and say, we pulled 7 patients completely off insulin. And then you scroll on Instagram and the next video of me is of me and my face being like, hi, I'm one of the patients and I'm no longer on insulin. And so all of a sudden there's nothing special about me, but I'm one of the faces of people walking around saying, this isn't in 5 years. All of these other studies that are out there happening are exciting things that are coming, but there's no real timeline and there's still a lot of bumps in the road. The cool part about the Eladon trial is it's happening now. We're here. We're walking around. The first patient has been off insulin almost 19 months. We have the data and the faces that match the data that people are like, yeah, I'm not diabetic anymore. And that's one reason that all of this, I believe, has gone so viral. People may not trust what gets posted about research, type 1, certainly. But when you see someone say, it happened to me, what questions do you have? It changes that skepticism.
And the perspective of everything too, like it did for both of us, it's That's crazy. How long is the trial? Is there a time frame on how long you're actually in the trial? what does that look like?
So when I originally joined the trial, it was for 1 year because it all comes down to funding, right? Like how long can they afford to keep us all on the medication? So when I originally joined the trial, it was for a year. And so my choice at the end of that year would have been to stop taking the trial medication and either eventually go back to having type 1 or to swap over from the trial medication to tacrolimus to protect my islet cells. The trial has already been extended to 2 years, and now it's already been extended to 3 years.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure that the good people at Eledon and Breakthrough T1D and Cure Alliance and all of these different places, my hope is that they will continue to fund the study so that they can get the long-term data, which obviously benefits them and then also benefits me because I don't want to go on traditional immunosuppressant. I wouldn't want to. I want to stick with what I've got.
Yeah. That's so crazy. What, I mean, just the brain is going crazy right now. What if they had come out like in the next, let's just say the trial's 5 years, right? As a hypothetical conversation. Because the big hang up in all of this is the immunosuppressant. Right? That's the big hang up in all of it, right? In every one of these studies. Have they communicated or asked you or told you, and maybe you know if they are they currently working on a different type of medication that might not be immunosuppressant that would still do the same thing that this drug that you're on now with Eladon is? Have they had that conversation? If you're using this current medication and they come out with a different one, do you get switched over to the new one? Like, I'm curious about this.
Yeah. So they haven't talked to me about like switching over to a different medication. What has been talked about I read all of the things from Eladon. I think what you'll see, so when this trial started, the goal was to prove that the trial drug, Tegaprubart, does a good job of protecting islets. So that's we've proven that without causing side effects. Like those are the two pieces.
Yeah.
So that's been proven. And so I think the next phases moving forward, right now it's an IV infusion every 21 days. I think eventually you'll see the time frame on that become much longer between needed infusions. I think eventually, if this becomes standard of care, this would be the type of thing like we can't all fly to Chicago every 21 days and get Tego. So I think it would be the type of thing maybe you go to a local lab and get it. And then they have started working on an actual, like a subcutaneous injection that you would take once a week or once a month from home. So like everybody else in America goes to the fridge once a week for their Ozempic or Mounjaro, we T1Ds would go to the fridge once a week and take our Tego shot. So I think what you'll see is the proof of concept. Does this medication work? Does it protect cells and does it keep people healthy? Yes. So next, what you'll see is fine-tuning that to be more lifestyle friendly. And I think it will take several years until it gets to a point that it's a pill or it's a one-time shot. I don't know what that looks like, but I think that's the thing that you will eventually see. It's not that it'll be necessarily a different medication coming out from Eladon. I think you'll see the medication become much more lifestyle friendly. So like if I offered you right now, like, do you want to have type 1 or would you rather have an IV every 21 days? What would your answer be?
Me personally,
Yeah.
give me as of right now, what I know about this, it's like, give me the IV.
Right. And so I think and that's the starting point. And so imagine in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, what the possibilities are for what a small piece of life. Type 1 is 24/7, 365. This has taken type 1 for me and turned it into such a tiny part of my life and my brain space. And I was trying to figure out what to do with all of my extra free time and brain space now that I'm not thinking about my blood sugar all the time. So I've turned that into talking about cures all the time. I'm putting all of my extra energy into helping this process along, educating people, and doing anything that I can to push along research that will make a widely available cure for everyone. Every type 1 diabetic deserves to have the opportunity to say, I used to have that. And
Mm-hmm.
so my new mission in life is to make that, do whatever I can, one tiny person, one tiny voice, but do whatever I can to make that real for everyone.
Man, I got goosebumps, girl. That's great. Man, it's so crazy because I like you, I've been such a skeptic on all of this stuff, and it's so crazy that the world that we live in now with all of this and being able to, I feel like I can now see the light at the end of the tunnel after 18
Mhm.
years. So
Yeah.
it's super cool. I want to take a quick pivot. I'm curious. I think I've heard you talk about this before on some of the other shows you've done. The islet cell transplant. Do
Mhm.
you have to get more islet cells, or was it just a one-time thing?
So it depends. Islet cell transplant. So sometimes you get just one. So and there's confusion over this. I've had a lot of people ask me this question because I use the word infusion twice when I'm talking about it. I talk about an islet cell transplant where they infuse islet cells into my liver. And then I talk about my every 21-day infusion, which is the trial drug.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, you don't get an islet cell transplant every 21 days. That's once. You get the infusion of the trial drug every 21 days. I'd like to clarify that because there are people that were like, I could never do a transplant every 21 days. And I'm like, yeah, me neither. Typically with this, what they see, so the Tego does a really, really good job of protecting islet cells. That is phenomenal. But when you're getting islet cells from a donor, there's a way to count how many there are, but there's not a way to really know what quality of islet cells there are.
Yeah.
So sometimes patients are good to go after like one transplant, like the one I had in January, and that's it. That's all they ever need. Sometimes we do a couple of, they're called mixed meal tolerance tests, where you actually test to see how much C-Peptide you're making, your reaction to carbs. And sometimes when they do that 2-month mixed meal tolerance test, mine's coming up at the end of March, what they see is that not all of those cells transferred over as much as they need to. So while your diabetes is better and you've got functioning islets, you still need more to be able, like, you could live a low carb lifestyle and never need insulin, but if you're going to go out and eat a whole pizza, you're going to need it
You
like
need a little bit of insulin.
a top off kind of.
Yeah.
And so sometimes patients have to come back in and get a second infusion of islet cells, a second islet cell transplant. And it really just depends. It's different for every patient because the islet cells that you get are different every time. So it's not really a status of, and sometimes it's like if there's a bigger guy coming in, he's going to need more islet cells than like a 90-pound, 5-foot woman coming in.
Yeah.
So it really just depends. But typically it's one islet cell transplant or two. I think there's been like one case where a guy needed 3, and then that's it. So that's it's not every 21 days. It's not every year. It's like once or twice. Once we get enough in there and functioning, then we just protect those.
That's awesome, man. Crazy stuff. So because this is coming from cadaver cells, these islet cells are cadaver cells. They're not like the Vertex where they're trying to grow them in a lab. Is there the because I was thinking about this the other day when I was listening. I can't remember which episode I was listening to, which podcast. I think you were talking about like if this passed FDA tomorrow, not everyone could take it because they're coming from cadaver cells and there's not enough cadaver cells out there.
Yeah. So there's really a couple of issues. Like there's a couple of hurdles in between this and the general public having it available tomorrow. So one thing that's different about the United States versus pretty much every other first world country in the world is that we classify islet cells as an experimental drug instead of as an organ. So what that means is that it's harder to get. It's harder to get done. Like to be part of this study, I had to prove that I'm a brittle diabetic and that I have hypoglycemia unawareness to prove that like to even participate, I'm like a super at-risk person. And therefore they can go ahead and test on me, which is interesting because when I got approved for everything, I didn't go on an experimental drug list. I went on a transplant list, but I digress. So islet cells in our country are classified like it would be easier for me to get a pancreas transplant than an islet cell transplant, which is nuts. So there's legislation to change that, but it's the United States government. And so obviously very fast moving. But when you hear me talk about, and I talk about it all the time, it's not a political thing. It's like a bipartisan act, but it's called the Islet Cell Act. And that's the whole point. So that's that first hurdle. What can happen if we get islet cells changed from an experimental drug to being classified as an organ is that insurance would cover it. So when insurance covers your islet cell transplant and can reimburse, and suddenly, like for my research team, instead of there being 10 patients, now 12 in this first study, they could have done 50 because they'd have had the funding to do it. Imagine how much faster this is going to move if they had 50 people that they were able to use versus 10. So that's one big piece. You can treat more people, it becomes more affordable, and the research is like exponential because it's more affordable. They can get reimbursed for all of this that they're doing. So passing that or getting islet cells reclassified as an organ, not a drug, is step one. That's like our immediate hurdle. We've got to get that done today before bed. I'm working on it. It's not looking good so far. I'll keep you updated. So step one. Step two is that still doesn't, so let's say it gets reclassified. Great. Let's say the Tego gets FDA approved tomorrow. Great. Anyone can have it. It's the standard of care. So now you've got 2 million diabetics who want it and want it now. And you've got a very limited, large, but still limited pool of islets available.
Yeah.
There's not ever going to be enough deceased organ donors where we can cure diabetes in real time for everyone who needs it. So the solution to that is some of these alternatives, these lab-grown islet cells. And there's multiple studies trying to, is it using pig islet cells? Is it lab-grown islet cells? The first hurdle is getting approval and getting the research done. Second hurdle is figuring out what it looks like to make that scalable and to make that something that's available to everyone. And so, after that, once we've got it reclassified, and then once we figure out how to make it scalable, and then once we figure out how to not need any immunosuppression or make that very lifestyle friendly, then we'll fight the battle of how do we make sure it's affordable? How do we make sure insurance? So when I talk to people about this, and I'm really excited, but I'm also like, there's a lot of battles ahead of us.
It's a lot to do, a lot to accomplish. Yeah.
And it's a long road, but for the first time in human history, there's a road. And so that's my view. That's the outlook. That's the future of, it won't be here tomorrow. But what better group of people to wake up and fight battles every day than type 1 diabetics? Because we've been doing it for years, day and night. And so I do think it'll happen. And I 100% believe that it will happen maybe sooner than a lot of people expect. I certainly hope that's the case.
Yeah. I saw the other day that the Islet Cell Act is having issues in the Senate. And I'm like, what the heck is going on?
What are we doing? Stop doing it. We've passed way too few things.
Like, come on. Are you serious right now?
Yeah. It's, everything. It's right. And so there is a part of this that's all big pharma, right? And there's a part of this that's political. And there are people that shouldn't even be involved in this that like are moving pieces of this puzzle. I'm not going to get into the political game. That's like not my area of expertise at all. I mean, the only thing I know less about than political strategy is medical stuff. So you've picked the right person to ask these questions to, Ken.
Love it. But we can still be conspiracy theorists.
We will be conspiracy theorists together. No, so, I don't know exactly what that looks like. I just know when I look at the road of, okay, this is here, it's happening now. What's the next step? What's the next step? Those are the next steps that I see. Those are the immediate battles that we have got to figure out before we can get to the next thing, before we can get to the next thing. So that's what I wake up and do every day is push for the next step.
What a great thing to dive into after this is like happened. I feel like you're like the face of this study.
Maybe it's not because I'm the best. It's just because I'm the loudest, I think. Yeah, for sure.
Who is the other guy that was on Lauren's podcast? Was that Aaron? His name's Aaron? Chris.
So okay. What's funny about Chris? So I'm patient 9 and the trial clip is patient 10. And we met because randomly I'm scrolling TikTok and I see this video from this guy that's like, just got the call, I'm part of the Eledon trial. So I message him, like, even as a fellow person in the trial. And I'm like, are you for real? Because I'm also in the Eledon trial. So we became friends on TikTok and we message back and forth, text back and forth all the time. And then when Lauren asked me to be on her podcast, then she circled back and she was like, hey, there's another patient. Do you know this guy, Chris? And I was like, Chris is my diabesity, man. Yeah, Chris and I could be on a
Let's go
together. Let's talk about all the things. So he's fun to watch because, he's just very real. And so unlike me, he's like a physician's assistant. He's a PA. So he actually does have medical knowledge, unlike me, who's just learning as we go. Chris actually has more medical expertise. So his perspective on things they tend to be more clinical than mine. I'm like, here's what this was like. And he's like, medically, here's what's happening to me. So you get kind of both perspectives.
Well, that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I want to take a step back real quick and talk about the health perspective of this whole thing. Did you again, I've listened to so many of these now. Did you say in one of your conversations with one of the podcasts that you had to be in a specific health category in terms of cardiovascular health, your health overall had to be good, very good to be able to even get in the study?
So yes and no. And so one thing I tell people, every trial, the criteria for every single trial, and even the criteria for the different phases of the Eladon trial are different. So the criteria I had to meet then there was a bunch, but I had to have an A1C between like 7 and 9. I couldn't have any history of diabetic retinopathy because this trial comes with rapid glucose control. We can talk about that. But if you have retinopathy, if you have a rapid correction of glucose control, it actually makes your retinopathy a lot worse. I couldn't have any amputations. I couldn't have kidney disease. And I mean, there were multiple things in there that would have excluded me or things that I have to be included. And it's very, very specific because what they're trying to do is build like a very similar profile so that we know if there are any variations or crazy side effects or whatever it is, that, it's not a random fluke because it was a person who already had heart disease. And so that's kind of they're putting together, we're all different, but medically we're very similar in this first cohort. So the first cohort is for people like me and people that just have type 1 diabetes. The next phase of the Eladon trial is for people that have type 1 and also have some form of kidney dysfunction. So that's super cool. You probably heard me talk about that. That's a totally different group that's getting included because with traditional immunosuppressants, they're very hard on your kidneys. So someone with any sort of kidney dysfunction or in kidney failure could not have an islet cell transplant because they wouldn't be able to be on the anti-rejection medication. So one of the reasons that the Eladon trial is so exciting is that this really opens the door for a cure for a lot of people with type 1 that wouldn't have been eligible for this in any other way. And ironically, a lot of people with type 1 that are being excluded from these other trials, those are people like type 1 can cause kidney issues. So there's a whole group of people out there being left out of trials up until now. So that trial is launching like soon is phase 2. They're recruiting for phase 2 now.
So interesting. Yeah, because my other thing with all of these trials was always like, okay, well, it's cool, but if we've got a full cure tomorrow, not everyone's going to be eligible for it because of a lot of the things we talked about, finances, insurance, and also because this person might not be on the healthy side.
Yeah.
So that was always a very interesting thought to me about all of these trials. It's like, we're waiting for the cure, but the best thing you can still do is
stay healthy.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. When I was on Scott's podcast, the Juicebox podcast, I love that he kind of took a caveat at the end and he was like, hey guys, this is super exciting. Very happy for her. So excited about Eladon. It won't be here tomorrow. So take your insulin, watch your blood sugar and keep it together so that when this does become available for you, you can have it. And like even prepping for, like, I was already in relatively good shape before I started the trial, but like mentally, I was like, once I knew my transplant day was coming, I was like working out extra and like trying to do everything that I could do to make sure that I was in like my best shape possible to make it as successful as possible.
Yeah.
Nobody told me to do that. They were like, okay, you're good to go. We'll call you. But just mentally, I was trying to take really good care of myself still.
Yeah. I actually do have a question about that, right? Because this is a diabetes, like we talked about at the beginning. It's a very mental, fatiguing condition, 24/7, 365. Do you feel like, now going through this, do you feel like Eladon should have mental health stuff? Maybe this is like mental health support, whatever it is. Should they have that also integrated into these?
That's interesting. So first piece of that, I think we need to do a lot more focus than we do on mental health when you get diagnosed.
Yes.
That is not addressed
100%.
nearly enough. You're dependent on your care provider to help you figure that out. When it comes to, mental health coming through this trial and unwinding the mental side of getting rid of diabetes, it's very different than I thought that it would be. The moments that I thought would be big moments aren't at all. And the moments that I realize my life is drastically different are very surprising. I get the question all the time, like, do I still think of myself as a type 1? And I'm like, no, I'm not diabetic. I don't have diabetes. But I'm now, I talk about diabetes now more than ever before because I've lived this experience. And now I'm like screaming from the rooftops. And so I think whether or not you consider me a type 1 diabetic, I don't know. But I will always be a type 1 diabetic advocate until the day that we're all completely done.
Yeah. Yeah. But
mental health, I don't know that Eladon, to answer your question, I don't know that Eladon would come through. The research team that's doing this trial is really good at helping you through the process.
Yeah.
So, and there are like mental health evaluations and those things built in. It's not traumatic like Diagnosis. It's like daily miracles. So I don't know. It's different, but it's not really exhausting like Diagnosis is.
Yeah. I was just very curious about it because it is an emotional thing, whether that emotion that you're having from this whole process is a very positive one, or if like I don't know the situation of why someone would go through a trial and it goes so well like it is for you, and you'd like, oh my God, I miss diabetes, or like, oh my God, I'm so burnt out,
Yeah, I have people that have said that, and they're like, this is exciting, but I've had diabetes since I was 10 months old. And there's a part of me that genuinely feels scared to not have diabetes.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who I am without it. And I don't know what would happen to my health if I didn't have to take such good care of myself. And so you and I still remember life before. But for a lot of type 1s, this is the only life they've ever known. And so suddenly taking a big piece of who they are and removing that is a different process for them. For us, it's a healing. I don't know that would be true for everyone. I mean, it is. Everyone wants a cure, but it's different.
Yeah. But I think that the point that you just made is perfect, Katie, because I think that for me, and being the person I am and like wanting to be the mentor and coach for people that are living with diabetes, the mental health piece is the number one piece for me every single time I talk to someone. And I could see from that perspective of like, okay, I've had diabetes since I was born or since I was 10 months old. And like, I don't know what to do without it. Like I could see where the mental health support in that aspect could be very, very important for that individual.
Yeah. The mental health piece that'll definitely be something that there will have to be some sort of a program system created.
100%. I think it's also interesting, people are saying to you like, type 1 diabetes is such part of my identity, or like, I don't know what it would be like to live without it. and not have to take care of myself. I'm like, wait a second, pause. Let's reframe that statement. You still have to take care of yourself.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. I got I've met a ton of islet cell recipients and people that have been in other trials. And there was a friend that I met through that. She's in a completely different trial from mine. And she said, once I hit the moment where she ended up getting an islet cell transplant and then she's on traditional immunosuppressants. But she said, once I hit that moment where like I didn't have diabetes anymore and I took my CGM off, and she said there was that moment in there where I like went nuts eating stuff that I was never allowed to eat before because I felt guilty or because it would ruin my blood sugar all day. And she said, after a few days in a row of going nuts, I thought to myself, I'm going to give myself other issues if I'm not really careful. Yep. So like there's a balance in there. Yeah. Between, for type 1s, our blood sugar is a constant indicator of health. My blood sugar goes up before I get sick. And I mean, it's something you're always attuned to what you're eating, if you're exercising. We watch every aspect of our health. And if you don't have to do that anymore, I don't know what that's like.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like coming from the health professional too, it's like, okay, like why would you not want to, continue eating and feeling amazing, eating good, healthy foods and feeling amazing? Why would you want to go back to McDonald's and Taco Bell and all the things that make you feel like crap? Like, why would you want to do that to yourself?
Yeah. It's been interesting too. Like now I rethink through foods. I'm like, do I actually not like donuts, or have I always just not liked donuts because they threw my blood sugar into such chaos that it was never worth it? And therefore, in my mind, I don't like donuts, but donuts are actually delicious. So it's weird. Not that I'll start eating donuts every day, but it's weird because you do kind of reimagine all of these foods that as a diabetic in your head are like good foods or bad foods. That's not true anymore. Like everything in you can literally have anything in moderation now. So that's very, very interesting. My relationship with pizza has changed immensely, and I'd like to tell you about it, Coach Ken.
Yes, please do. I love pizza.
This is going to be the highlight of the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
This is the moneymaker clip. So everyone knows number one worst food for a type 1 diabetic to try to eat and plan for is pizza, because it's such a mix of like carbs and sugar and protein and fat, and like getting the timing correct of bolusing your insulin is so challenging. And I can't tell you how many times in my life I'm like I'll check my blood sugar and be like, knocked it out of the park, nailed it. And then 2 hours later, I'm like sky high or super low. There's no telling how it's going to go. So the interesting part now is for me, eating pizza with functioning islet cells, I don't even show a blood sugar spike. It's so easy because as some of the carbs get processed, my islet cells take care of those. And then my body processes whatever else. And then as more glucose gets put in my bloodstream, it comes in. So, I'm better off eating a piece of pizza because I'm digesting that properly than I am eating something that might be considered healthier, but is full of carbs. That's still going to make my blood sugar spike more than pizza would. So very interesting. Had a piece of pizza the other night. My flight was delayed getting home. I got home at midnight and there was pizza in the fridge. My husband had left, and like I ate a slice of pizza and didn't think anything about it. I was so tired. I just ate a slice of pizza, and then I was like, that's between the pizza and the islets now. I'm going to bed. It's in the Lord's hands. And I woke up and didn't even have any sort of a spike. I woke up perfectly in range, and that was one of those not a big deal moments that was huge for me.
Yeah. Wow, girl. Man, you're making this trial look really nice right now.
Yeah. Pizza and donuts, Coach Ken.
Pizza and donuts, man. Let's go.
Yeah. No, it's, it all comes down to, still taking care of it. Like I still exercise, I still eat well, because that's who I am at my core. Like I'm not ever going to be that person that like just throws all caution to the wind and lives on cotton candy and full sugar lemonade. I could if I wanted to.
Yeah, you could. And for me, that's the scary part. Like from the health coach perspective, like that's the real scary part of all of this. Just like the GLP-1s are really scary from the health perspective, because we just don't know 100% what the long-term effects of them are. And just the way People are using them, not using them. Like it's all over the place. But yeah, I think it is important for everyone, for me, the two biggest takeaways for me of all of this is it's right around the corner, but it's not here yet. And we got to make sure that we're still taking care of ourselves. So when it is here, we are able to do it. And then the other thing that I'm taking away from this is, it is an amazing time to be open to the possibilities of not being a skeptic, of being open to the possibilities of these things actually being a real, very, very close to the future possibility, not just for people like Katie that filled out some information and went down rabbit holes, right? We're not going to have to do that. I think it's very important for us to just keep our brains open-minded about everything. I'm so excited, Katie, of continuing to watch how this journey unfolds. Like it's like ever since I saw Neil in your episode, it's just like on my brain all the time. And then seeing all the other ones, listening to all the other ones, I'm just like, oh my God, this is a real thing. Yeah. This is some serious, this is not like the other ones that have been coming out. So I want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you for having a really hard blood sugar day and going down the rabbit hole. And now you're in this amazing position and you're able to educate all of us. You've got a loud voice about this and you're just going to keep communicating and talking about this. And I really hope that your voice, everything that you're talking about, going viral, everything, the Senate hears all of this, everybody, all of those policy makers hear all of this. So now there's like a face to this crazy movement. There's more voices to this crazy movement. So I just thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts for that.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for having me on and giving me another opportunity to talk about it.
Absolutely. Everybody, we're about an hour and 15 minutes and I feel like I keep going with Katie. We'll let her go. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. I will make sure that all of Katie's information, her Instagram, anything else, any other resources or anything that she thinks is important, we'll make sure that is in the show notes. This will also, obviously, if you're listening to this on audio, this will come out on YouTube as a video format. If you want to see Katie's beautiful face as we talk, this will also be out on video. So I'm really excited for all of you to listen to the whole I'm really excited that you guys made it through the whole entire episode. Again, Katie, thank you so much for being here and having yet another opportunity to tell your story. Everybody, thank you so much for listening, and I will see everybody next time.